as I've told you before, I'm a fan for a long damn time. I first learned about you like everybody through Tower Records and all those places. The Hi,
Yeah.
My Name Is Jonny album was up all over the places in the catalog, on the listening station. And then from there, I remember getting pitched a bunch of your EPs from the Planetary Group, different stuff. So it must feel weird at this point when people say to you, like, oh, yeah, I've been a fan of Jonny for 25 years.
It's wild. I mean, no, that's great. I love hearing that. It's wild that it's been 25 years. You know, that first record, it was exactly 25 years ago. Um, and I'm putting it out on vinyl for the first time. So I'll be getting that in a few months. But yeah, man, time is crazy. You know, it feels weirder and weirder. But it's great. I love when people, are still along for the ride all these years later.
Yeah, the era when you first got that major label deal with American, it was almost a common story. Not that a dude called up Reefer or that kind of part, but the dude who plays all the instruments on the album and is somewhere between the age of 17 and 22. There was a lot of you guys out there, Jason Faulkner, John from Superdrag. It was just kind of a common story. And it's interesting to see how things have evolved to now people who make music on GarageBand who actually don't play any instruments.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, whatever gets the job done. I mean, uh, it's a different era, and like, rock music isn't the center of the culture anymore.
Yeah.
And I have my preferences, but it's not good or bad. It's just like just how things are evolving. And I mean, I love a lot of electronic music. Like I think Arca is really brilliant, and there's One Old Tricks Point Never. I'm a big fan of.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I love songs. I mean, it's not even a nostalgia thing necessarily. Maybe it is, but like, like a great song is like, there's just nothing like it. Like I love great bands and I love hearing people's personalities come through whatever they're doing. And you can hear it in electronic music too. I mean, you hear it in Bjork, or you hear it in, you know, all sorts of stuff where it doesn't matter whether you're using a guitar or a computer. There's plenty of bands and artists that are totally insufferable and they're playing acoustic instruments, and it's all in the person and how they use it and the choices they make and just their soulfulness and just openness. But what was the question?
Well, whatever it was a compliment at you and the musicianship, and that at the time it wasn't this crazy thing where one guy played all the instruments and did all the
Yeah.
vocals on the album. That was self-sufficient, even
Yeah,
though
I mean,
you
I
know.
started doing that when I was a kid. Like it wasn't. I remember being like 5 or 6 years old and being totally obsessed with the Beatles, and I was too young to really understand. Like I kind of understood that. I'd see pictures and like, oh, that's a guitar, or those are drums, but it was too. I just loved the sound that it made. Like to me, it was just this one sound coming out of the speakers, and I was just totally in love with that sound. I was like, I want to learn what that is. Like I want to be a part of that. So I started picking things apart, and I would get really interested in the guitar, interested in the drums, interested in eventually in the bass and like every little aspect. And it wasn't any kind of conscious thing of like, I'm going to be a multi-instrumentalist or anything like that. I was just like, I was just interested. Like, what's that sound? Like, oh, the intro to She Loves You. Like, oh, those are the drums. That's cool. And as I got older, I like someone sold me a drum set in high school for $200 and was totally obsessed with the Who. So every afternoon I would run home and like, listen to the Kids Are All Right soundtrack and play along with that, and Talk Is Cheap, Steve Jordan and Charlie Drayton, just totally obsessed with all these different musicians. And it wasn't me, trying to, it wasn't me trying to do anything other than have a good time. I mean, there was little inspirations along the way, like, oh, okay, like that's interesting. Like Adrian Belew plays all the instruments on his albums. Like I was really into Adrian Belew growing up. Stevie Wonder, Paul McCartney's first couple solo records. I loved Terence Trent D'Arby.
Yeah.
He played everything on Neither Fish Nor Flesh. I love that second record. I was totally obsessed with that in high school. Chris Mars, the drummer from The Replacements, I think he made the best solo record post Replacements out of all of them. And I love all of them. I'm a massive Replacements fan. But he played everything except the bass. And again, it's just like, it's whatever gets the job done. Like I love bands. Like just whatever makes things great. So I've always been interested in all these different musicians and different ways of approaching music and writing and just performing. And I don't know, so I get bored too. Like I love guitar, that's my main instrument. I've got like too many, but
Well, those are your
I get
tools.
bored and I'll, play keyboards, play drums, whatever. I like programming. Like the last couple of records, there's a lot more electronic elements, and it's not me trying to keep up with the Joneses or whatever. It's just like I hear stuff and like, ooh, this is kind of cool. Like I want to, be a part of that, or I want to incorporate this, and I don't like being bored. Like I don't like doing things that feel too easy to me.
Yeah.
It's weird because like you want to be natural, or I want to do what comes naturally, but also like I get sick of doing stuff. I get sick of doing things the same way, and I love that people love that first record still. But it's also frustrating because sometimes, well, more than sometimes, I'll hear something to the effect of like, I wish you would write songs like that again, and like I get it because like there's artists that I wish they would write songs like what particular record that I love. So I totally get it, and I appreciate the fact that people listened at all and are into it. But at the same time, it's just like, damn, like I couldn't even do it if I wanted to. It's like things come out in a certain way because I was 18 when I wrote those songs. Like I was a kid. I was a teenager, and it was the 90s. It was a very different era. Like just things were different in the air,
Absolutely.
So you can't replicate stuff, and I wouldn't want to. It's just like I like the feeling of discovery. Like I remember writing those songs, and the whole thing for me was just like I was so obsessed with Nirvana and the Replacements and the Pixies and Frank Black and Social Distortion and all these bands. And I felt like I couldn't do that because they were cool and I wasn't, and like or whatever that's some kind of judgment or whatever. And like I would finally like make some songs and be like, oh shit, like this sounds good. Like I can actually do this. And after you can do it for a while, like there's other things. It's like, oh, I love fucking, the Scorpions or System of a Down. I can't do that. Like I'm known for doing this other thing. So like that'll be weird, right? It's like, who cares, man? Like I'm just trying to be creative and do stuff that is fun. Like ultimately, like, doesn't mean that there's no depth or that there's no meaning or catharsis or anything like that. But like if fun isn't an element that's present, then something is wrong. I learned that from Hunter S. Thompson. There's a book. There's a book that his widow put out.
Well, you just said a bunch of things that I don't think you realize how prophetic they are. But one of the things that makes you stand out, in my opinion, is you aren't just a fan a lot of the artists that have come up that maybe it sounds like you're influenced by, but you also worked with or befriended a lot of these people. And I'm curious, when you lost the imposter syndrome, some artists never do, but it seems like you did a long time ago.
I think it's always there a little bit. I mean, sometimes a lot. It really depends. Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like I've arrived anywhere. Like I still feel like I'm starting over all the time, especially the last few years. I don't mean like for it to sound complaining. It's just like it's hard. It's a hard era for anyone. I mean, U2 will put out a record and 2 weeks later, no one gives a shit, unless they're like busy complaining about that it's in their computer still or whatever,
Yes.
But like, it's just so to make me, I make music for myself, but I share it with people because I want them to feel excited or feel something. Like I love making people feel good, and I love making people feel irritated. Like I like the worst is like when people just don't care and they don't respond, or it's like, oh, that's okay, that's fine, So I share stuff. I make the records, hoping that people will get as excited about it as I do. It's difficult these last bunch of years for pretty much everybody. I mean, some people are able to eke out a living, or they're on a label, or they're able to tour, but I think pretty much everyone is feeling the crunch from streaming and not being able to sell records, and just I love touring. Like I would tour all the time if I could. I would put all my shit in storage and just stay on tour, like Bob Dylan. Like that to me is really fun. but some people don't like it, but they have to because they don't have any other way to pay the bills. And obviously, like this last year, like that's totally out of the question.
Right.
But I did do a short European tour before lockdown last year.
The
And that was actually,
documentary that I was going to ask you about next. Please
yeah,
continue.
that was exciting. That came out and got pretty well received, like especially in Belgium. But this guy, I guess he pulled a Jonny Polonsky. Like he just wrote me, on Instagram. He was a fan. He loved the first record, and just asked if I would come over and play some shows. And it was incredible. Like he put the entire tour together, which is like nobody wants to do that. Luckily, he'd never done it before, so he didn't know how miserable it is. It's so hard putting together a tour. But he did it, and he let me stay in his home with his wife and kids, and was really generous and gracious. And he had a camera crew following me the entire time and paid for it on his own dime. He's basically like a huge like TV celebrity. He's like the Ryan Seacrest of Belgium. And I hadn't heard of him because I'm not familiar with Belgian culture other than like Toots Thielman. But he is like a huge star over there. Like we'd go, into a bar, whatever, people like, oh, there's Otto Jan, they'd freak out. But he loved this first record, and he brought me over and put together this 2-week tour, went to Amsterdam and Germany as well, and filmed the whole thing. And he made it into this movie, and it came out really good. Like I was surprised. Like it's a really fun, kind of weird watch. And he's got connections over there, so he got it onto like the main commercial TV station in Belgium. I mean, they probably only have one. I don't know.
They
but
probably have one. You're right about that. It's interesting to see with singer-songwriters from the States, the 1 or 2 countries they have a random fan base that they're huge in because one person picked them up. Like, do you know Mike Viola by any chance? If
I know
not,
the name.
You have a trillion mutual friends with him.
Yeah.
He's the guy who secretly sang That Thing You Do and then wrote a lot of Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. And this guy who's one of the biggest singer-songwriters of Denmark loves Mike and started bringing him over. So he's got Denmark.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see when these kinds of things happen. Linus of Hollywood, he has Japan, just like Paul Gilbert does. So in your case, Belgium. And had you toured Belgium back in the supposed heyday, or at least with Pussifer or anything?
No, I played Belgium. I used to play keyboards in April March. She's like a fake French artist. She's from New Hampshire, but she sings in French and does like 60s yeah music. That was in the late 90s. So I'd been to Brussels, but that was it. So this was totally out of the blue. And that's part of the cool thing about the documentary is that the guy who brought me over, Otto Jan, I had like pretty big expectations, and I had none. I was just psyched to go over to Europe and just get out of New York for a minute. And like, I was just totally psyched that somebody wanted to do this. So I was expecting like, between 0 and a half person at each show. So I just had a blast, but he was, the movie shows like, and this is not like at all a dig on him. It's just like, he just, I think it was a little more disappointed than I was. I was just super psyched just to be driving around and playing shows. But it's rife with dramatic tension.
I have to see it and not just the trailer, to say the least.
It's pretty fun.
Everyone else does. It sounds like it's Anvil without the fake storyline of Spinal Tap woven into it.
Wait, I thought Anvil was real. Aren't they?
Anvil is real, but I mean, it's the same exact story arc as Spinal Tap.
Yeah.
Where it basically starts in Japan and ends in Japan, and a member quits, so they're down to a trio. And the guy who put together Anvil, I mean, he's an Emmy-winning producer. I just assumed it was staged. I could be totally wrong about that.
Wait, I haven't seen it in so long. Is that the movie with Mark, what's his name, with the mustache and like, and his like kind of chunky friend who barely says anything and then screams his brains out?
Oh, I was talking about Anvil, the early 80s Canadian band Metal on Metal was their hit.
I think I'm mixing it up with a different movie.
Friend Who Screamed. I don't know, but when you think of what that movie is called, I'm going to be watching that after I watch your documentary in its
Yeah.
entirety. So one thing I have no idea, because you said the Scorpions before. I love the Scorpions. I find that even the most serious singer-songwriter has a soft part in their heart for the Scorpions. Mike Doughty, who I know you're also friends with, big Scorpions fan, but no one would ever know that. So if you like the Scorpions, that means you probably like Van Halen.
Oh yeah.
Where in your musical evolution did it all start? Did it go from Kiss to Van Halen and Motley Crue? Was that the beginning of it all?
I never got into Kiss. I mean, I like Kiss, but and I love Motley Crue, but Van Halen. I was born in '73, so I've never known a world without Van Halen. Um, my first recollection is watching MTV. We got it pretty early. I think like around '82 or something. So I was like 8 or 9, and I remember seeing the Unchained video. I think it's from their '81 tour, right?
Oakland '81, yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like there's something about it. Like I liked the song a lot, but it kind of scared me. And the video was so cool. It's like like wow, like it's so intense, like that stage and all those speakers. But the band also, there's something kind of dark and like slightly sinister about it to me. As an 8-year-old, whatever. Just looking at, I think Alex has the gong, and
Sure.
it's just like whoa, it's just intimidating. And then all I can remember is really being aware of them for 1984, because I'd already started playing guitar by then. So holy shit, when Hot for Teacher came out, it was just the most thrilling thing. And to be honest, it still is. Like, I don't know why, but like that, it's just, I don't even think it's their best record necessarily, but the songs on there are definitely the I think the strongest. I don't even mean the best, but there's just like something about, you can hear like the Full Bug or all these different tunes that kind of, they're playing the same grooves, but then they finally on 1984, like they really kind of crystallize everything. But I think as far as my favorite record, I think it's probably Fair Warning and Women and Children after that. But anyway, so 1984, I mean, that intro to Hot for Teachers is just so incredible. And I learned how to play it for the most part when I was 10. I went to this guitar store and got the tablature, because I kind of knew how it went in my head, but like, I still play it. It's just like, ooh, like, it's just like, there's something about that band that's just so timeless and incredible. And I don't know. I don't think Alex gets nearly enough recognition either. He's such an incredible drummer. It's sort of like the Jimi Hendrix, Mitch Mitchell syndrome. Where I think Mitch Mitchell is one of the greatest drummers of all time, just so brilliant, but nobody ever talks about him unless they're like a drummer, really. Drummers know, and drummers know how incredible Alex is, but Alex gets overshadowed by Eddie. Plus, I mean, Alex, like the whole image, like the mirrored aviators, and he's so cool, and like, he's almost, it's just something like really remote, and I love that, but like it doesn't, sell magazines probably as well as like the big smile and whatever. But yeah, I mean, Van Halen has always been a huge part of my musical diet and upbringing, and just endlessly inspirational. They're one of the great joys of being alive on this planet.
Anytime that I interview somebody, whether they're a performer, a producer, a songwriter, if they've been around 25 plus years, it seems like they nearly worked with Van Halen on something. Like, for example, when I spoke with Butch Vig a couple of months ago, he said he was asked to produce the album that became A Different Kind of Truth, and he declined. Desmond Child, the thing, he said that Dave Grohl and Taylor Hawkins talked him into it and then talked him out of it, saying that they'd be difficult.
Oh, well.
Whatever the story is there. Desmond Child, he told me a story about how Roth wanted to work with him, and then later on he was with the Van Halens, and Roth summoned, he was kind of like, go away, Desmond. So he didn't work with them. And then I heard this guy used to play with Aerosmith on keyboards. For a little while, he almost joined Van Halen as like an extra player. Now, your Rick Rubin connection, I'm just assuming at some point you had to have met a member of Van Halen.
I wish, man. I remember the first time I met Rick Rubin, though, I was 19 or 20, and we met at some one of them fancy restaurants somewhere in Uptown. And I remember telling him, like, I really, I want to make records and I want to do it how I want to do it. And if I want to make a country record next, I want to make a country record, and I want to produce artists that are, aren't kind of down on their luck. Like I want to produce like David Lee Roth or something. And it's like, oh, David's a friend. It's like, cool. He knows David Lee Roth. But no, man, I when I lived in LA, my kids, my son especially, when they were little, were totally obsessed with Van Halen. And Dave's house is kind of common knowledge, and just on some corner, like on a main street. So we went out there once and just like stood outside and looked in or whatever. But like, no, man, I would have loved to met Eddie. He seemed so cool. I don't know. I didn't have anything to do with him. I wish.
Well, going back to you and your lineage, did you follow from being a fan of 1984 into Roth's solo catalog, or did you come back to it later on?
No, I was paying attention at the time. I loved Just a Gigolo and California Girls. Those were really fun. Like those were huge too, if you remember. Like it was,
Dave
he was
TV.
still, yeah, Dave TV, and yeah, he's a blast. As the years went on, like I kind of dropped off after. I still really liked Skyscraper. I remember listening to him on Rockline, and I love Steve Vai, and Eat 'Em and Smile, of course. But after Skyscraper, I just kind of dropped off, and like you'd kind of, I'd like DLR band, whatever, like you'd hear things here and there, but like I don't know, kind of lost interest. But I mean, Dave, just as a cultural figure, is totally fascinating.
Yes.
And maybe that's the wrong phrase, cultural figure, but like just as a, he's just so, I just finished his autobiography for the first time. I'd never read it. Yeah, I'm sure he's a nightmare to work with. Like any lead singer is crazy. Like if they're any good, less so if they play an instrument.
Usually, of course.
Well, I mean, like when you're, I've never fronted a band, other than just fucking around when you're not holding an instrument, but you have to have so much. It takes a lot of balls and takes a lot of presence, and like holding a guitar, you can just kind of stand there and whatever, look sort of cool, but like to command a stage, especially the way he does, like he's just the ultimate. I mean, there's people that do it differently, but nobody does it better. Like there's just no one that will ever top David Lee Roth, for what he does. But yeah, he's just really brilliant, and this sounds weird to say, but like to me, he strikes me as being a really soulful, thoughtful person. Like you wouldn't think of that because he's like such a huckster, just like everything he says rhymes, and you know what I mean. It's just like he's so endlessly entertaining. But yeah, I mean, reading the book and just reading interviews, like he's very PMA, and like he'll try anything. Like he's got tremendous courage, and he'll just take risks, in his personal life and pursuing interests. And I love that. Like he's super passionate, and
well,
it's cool.
One thing that I'm curious about, because you were talking about Hot for Teacher before, and YouTube has gotten really good at predicting what I like, for better and for worse. And the other day it said like Steel Panther live with Nuno Betancourt, Hot for Teacher. And you're like, oh, cool. Let's see Nuno play Hot for Teacher on guitar.
He's amazing.
Nuno gets behind the drums and plays the Hot for Teacher intro. Perfect.
Wait, who did?
Nuno Betancourt from Extreme.
On drums?
On drums.
Oh, no, I didn't know he played drums.
I didn't know that either. And he totally killed it. And like no mistakes, except for like getting used to it at the beginning. Now for you, did you learn how to play the Van Halen stuff on drums also, or did you just?
Hell no, are you kidding? I can't do that. I can fake it, but it'll sound bad. But no, I mean, even the guitar intro, like going into the main part, I still don't know what he's doing exactly. I just kind of approximate it. But I love that intro. I just think it's really exhilarating and beautiful. Um, there's so many like Unchained, um, Hear About It Later. I mean, even like, dare I say, I don't know if it's allowed on this particular podcast, but like,
You say it.
what's that song? What's that song?
You,
Finish What You Started.
yeah.
I love that guitar lick.
Yeah,
You
that's an
know,
interesting tone that he has also. It's like the cleanest
yeah, it
electric
was
guitar
cool.
sound ever.
Yeah, I did play with Sammy once, but you know, I never played with Dave.
In what context did you play with Sammy? You did a session or
I
something?
was touring with Tom. I was playing bass in Tom Morello's band, and this was like probably 12 or 13 years ago. We were doing a West Coast tour for like a week or 10 days or something. It was a great band. It was a couple guys, a couple local guys with the rhythm section. I mean, with me, and Tom was playing guitar. Brother Wayne Kramer from the MC5 on guitar. Steve Earle,
Wow.
and he's amazing, man. Like everywhere we would go, he wouldn't stop talking, but it was in the best possible way. Cause like he's got a story about everything. He's been everywhere, every city. He'd be like, "Oh yeah, man." He would like tell you the history of, you know, this building we're passing on the right, and like, "Oh, that corner over there, like I bought drugs there in the '80s," and you know, it's just like a fascinating dude who's like he knows about absolutely everything, and just a cool guy. And it's fucking Steve Earle, like to play with him, and
Yeah.
Wayne, it's like crazy. But every city we'd stop in, Tom would call some of his rock star buddies, and in San Francisco, uh, Sammy came out with Joe Satriani, and we did some we did a Montrose tune.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
That is something that intrigues me. You're very modest considering the people that you're friends with and or have played with, and I'm the one who just keeps complimenting you on all that. But it's always been funny to me that Tom Morello's favorite bands seem to be Kiss, Van Halen, and stuff of that ilk. But then the music he does is so serious. But he seems like he's just always kidding if he's off stage. But then the second he gets on stage, he has to be way serious. Do I have that totally wrong?
I don't know. I mean, are you talking about the Night Watchman stuff? His acoustic solo stuff?
Not just that, Rage. There's not a lot of humor in Audio Slave. Granted,
Yeah.
not his lyrics per se.
No, I understand. No, he's a blast. Tom is just like the coolest guy. Really funny, really fun, just a great companion, just a super cool dude to be on tour with or just to hang out with. Yeah, when I lived there, we became buddies for a couple of years, and he was definitely like a mentor, you know. I mean, I worked for Audio Slave. I was just an in-town band tech, basically. I would record their rehearsals and get them lunch or whatever. Like that was my day job. But that was fucking incredible to watch that band every single day for like 5 or 6 hours. You know, like 20 feet away from Chris Cornell, watching him sing and watching all them play. You know, you just learn stuff by osmosis. I don't even know how to articulate it. And after they broke up, I had a band with Timmy and Brad for like 9 months or something like that, which is how I ended up meeting Maynard and got in Pussifer because they were old friends with him. And he came down one day and sang, and we made up a couple songs. But anyway, so Tom is like, yeah, I mean, I love that. I'm a huge fan of all those bands, and I understand what you're saying, but like, I think people should be more serious, like, or they should be like whatever they are, like they should just do it full on. And I love people who not like without wit or humor or whatever, but just like when they're fucking doing it, they do it. Like Dylan or, you know, Jimi Hendrix or Rage, like, you know, whatever. It's like, you know, it's just not really an obvious element, or maybe even an element at all. You know, having like a lightheartedness, or whatever. It's super fucking intense, and it'll blow your mind. You
And
know,
if Roth is to you maybe the number one quintessential frontman, is there anyone that comes close? And I know I'm putting you on the spot there. Like, is there a
I mean,
number?
there's so many great frontmen. Like I love like Steven Tyler back in the day. I mean, it depends on, like I love Dio. That's a different thing though. But I mean, Rob Halford. But as far as just like sheer showmanship and, I mean, the outfits with like those fuzzy Uggs, and the skin tight satin, and like the late '70s outfits and fucking leg kicks, and the 30 feet in the air leg spread, like in the hair and the shit he would say, like, yeah, I mean, for that, who does that? Nobody does that.
Well, the last thing I have to ask about that is how exactly did you know personally that the music is for me, but that's kind of where it ends with Van Halen and David Lee Roth? Like, you weren't going to dress like that or try and do the karate kicks or be the funny guy on stage. You were just going to go, these are the great licks to play on different instruments. I love listening to it, and that's where the lifestyle ends.
Oh, maybe I made a mistake. I should have pursued that. I don't know. It's just like anything, certain things. Well, for one thing, like growing up in that era, guys like that, they were just gods. Like there's just nothing. It's a different era now. Not only are bands different, but attitudes are different towards all the bands and artists. People are being seen as human, which is what they are, obviously, but I kind of didn't know that back then. Like it was just it's hard to even describe. I mean, you probably know what I'm talking about, but like, MTV and Rolling Stone and Circus Magazine and like, whoa, like, oh, I hear that. Oh, okay, he grew up in Pasadena, but still, but I can't do that, there's that element of it, it's like, how do you get from, some dweeb in middle school to the US Festival? That surely isn't humanly possible. But I don't know. I just never, at the time, I just didn't feel attracted to it. I just loved the music. And I don't know. I mean, I used to dress kind of freaky when I was like a teenager. I was super into Jimi Hendrix. I mean, I still am. But like, honestly, the honest answer is like, I think it got scared out of me. Like I was pretty flamboyant and I still have my moments. But like, yeah, I think it's a New Year's goal. I want to dress freakier.
Well, the last question, bringing everything together. So we talked about this earlier, but the 25th anniversary version of Hi, My Name Is Jonny on vinyl, the documentary, I believe you had, let me look at my notes, Kingdom of Sleep, Power and Greed and Money and Sex and Death. Anything else that we should know about? The massive.
I just got this in the mail today. This will probably be backwards.
Okay.
The vinyl for the brand new record. I just got it a couple hours ago. That's Power and Greed and Money and Sex and Death. I got Jane Wiedlin from the Go-Go's on that, and also the guy from the Kung Fu Panda soundtracks who plays the Chinese instrument called the erhu. But yeah, that's it. I got 2 records from last year. That documentary just came out and it's still available on the internet, YouTube, Vimeo, and putting out Hi, My Name Is Jonny on vinyl for the first time in May. And, hopefully all this madness will abate sometime this year and get back to touring and doing fun shit instead of just protesting and holding your face in your hands every day.
Exactly. Well, I can't thank you enough for not just your time, but the many years of great music, and looking forward to seeing what's coming next for you, whatever that is.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it, Darren. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Keep me posted. Thanks, Jonny.
Over and out.
Paltrocast.